Once upon a time in a small dusty town, there lived a beggar who sat at the same corner every single day. His clothes were torn, his hair messy, and his face covered with years of sadness. People walked past him every morning, some gave him coins, most ignored him completely. He would stretch his hand and whisper the same words every day, "Please help me, I am poor, I have nothing." Years passed, and nothing changed. One day a wise traveler passed through the town. He noticed the beggar and stopped. He watched him for a while, then slowly walked up to him and said, "Brother, what are you doing here every day?" The beggar looked up confused. "I am begging, sir," he said quietly. "I have no choice, this is my life." The traveler smiled gently and said, "What if I told you that your life could change if you just changed your thoughts?" The beggar frowned. "My thoughts? What do my thoughts have to do with my empty bowl?" The traveler knelt beside him and said, "Everything in life begins with your mindset. If you believe you are poor, you will remain poor. If you believe you have no power, you will never act. But if you believe that you can change, then the world around you will start to change too." The beggar laughed softly and said, "That sounds nice, but I have been here for years, nothing has ever changed for me." The traveler pointed at the mountain far away and said, "You see that mountain? It looks impossible to climb from here, but every step you take brings you closer to the top. The same is true for your mind. One small thought can start a journey that changes your entire life." That night, for the first time, the beggar could not sleep. He kept hearing the traveler's words echo in his head, "Change your mindset, and your life will change." He looked at his bowl, empty as usual, but instead of feeling hopeless, he felt something new inside him. A spark, a tiny voice whispering, "Maybe I can do something more." The next morning he woke up earlier than usual. He looked around the market where he always begged. He noticed the fruit sellers, the shopkeepers, the men loading carts, and the children running with joy. For the first time he wondered what would happen if he tried something different. He stood up, cleaned his face with a bit of water from a nearby well, and walked to a fruit seller. "Sir, can I help you carry your baskets today?" he asked nervously. The fruit seller looked surprised but agreed. By evening the beggar earned a few coins, not from begging but from working. It was little, but it felt different. When he held the coins in his hand, he felt proud, not desperate. That night he smiled for the first time in years. He whispered to himself, maybe the traveler was right, maybe life really begins in the mind. The next day he did the same. Each day he tried a little harder. He learned to clean, to lift, to sell, and slowly the people in the market began to recognize him. He was no longer the beggar who sat in the corner. He was the man who helped everyone. He began saving a small amount every day, even if it was just a single coin. Weeks turned into months. His clothes were cleaner, his eyes brighter, and his walk more confident. One afternoon the same wise traveler returned to the town. He walked through the market and looked around for the beggar. But he could not find him. He asked a boy nearby, "Where is the beggar who used to sit at the corner?" The boy smiled and pointed toward a small stall where a man was selling fruits. "There, sir, that is him." The traveler turned and saw the man. He was standing tall with a smile on his face, greeting customers with respect and kindness. The traveler walked closer and said, "So you changed your corner for a stall, I see." The man laughed and said, "No, sir, I changed my mindset. And when my mind changed, everything else changed with it." The traveler smiled proudly. "You see, you were never truly poor, you just believed you were." The beggar turned merchant, nodded, and said, "Now I believe I am capable, I believe I am worthy. And everyday life shows me that I was right to believe." The traveler placed his hand on the man's shoulder and said, "Never forget this truth. The greatest prison is the one we build inside our own minds. When you open that prison door, you become free forever." The man nodded with tears in his eyes and said, "Thank you for showing me the key." The traveler smiled and said, "You always had the key, I only reminded you to use it." And from that day on the man shared his story with everyone who came to his stall. Whenever he saw someone hopeless, he would tell them, "Change your mindset, and your life will change." The story of the beggar spread through the whole town, inspiring others to think differently. Slowly people began to believe that they too could rise above their struggles. The marketplace became filled with hope instead of despair. And every time someone passed the man's fruit stall, they would hear him say with a warm smile, "Change your mind, and your world will follow." But one day, something unexpected happened. A young boy about 12 years old came to the fruit stall. His clothes were torn, his face dusty, and his eyes filled with sadness. He stood silently watching the man selling fruits and counting his coins. The man noticed him and asked, "Young boy, are you hungry?" The boy nodded slowly. Without a second thought, the man handed him an apple and said, "Here, eat this." The boy smiled faintly and began to eat as if he hadn't eaten for days. After a few moments, the man asked, "What are you doing out here alone? Where are your parents?" The boy lowered his head. "My father died 2 years ago," he said softly, "and my mother is sick. I beg in the market to buy her medicine." The man looked at him carefully, and for a moment it was as if he was looking into a mirror of his own past. He saw himself sitting at that same corner years ago with the same helpless eyes and the same broken spirit. He took a deep breath and said, "Sit here for a moment, I want to tell you something." The boy sat beside him, clutching the apple in his hand. The man said, "Do you see this stall, these fruits, this smile on my face? It was not always like this. I used to be like you. I used to sit on the ground every day asking people for help. But then one day a wise traveler told me something that changed my life. He told me that if I changed my mindset, my life would change too. At first I did not believe him, but slowly I started to try. I started to think that maybe I could do something more." The boy listened quietly, his eyes wide and filled with curiosity. The man continued, "The moment I believed that I could be more, my actions started to change. I stopped waiting for help and started helping myself." The boy's lips parted slightly, and he whispered, "But I have nothing. What can I do?" The man smiled and said, "You have everything. You have your mind, your heart, and your will to try. That is more powerful than gold." He handed the boy a small basket of fruits and said, "Tomorrow come early. You can help me sell these fruits and earn for yourself and your mother." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure I can do this?" The man placed his hand gently on the boy's shoulder and said, "You can do much more than this, but first you must believe it." That night the boy went home and told his mother everything. For the first time in years, she saw hope in his eyes. The next morning he went to the stall just as the sun rose. He helped the man arrange the fruits, greeted customers, and counted coins carefully. By evening he earned enough to buy food and medicine for his mother. As the days passed, the boy learned quickly. He spoke kindly to customers, helped clean the market, and always smiled. Weeks turned into months, and he was no longer the quiet, shy boy who once begged at the corner. He became confident, strong, and full of life. The man watched him grow with pride and said to himself, "This is how the cycle of change begins. When you change your own life, you can help others change theirs too." Years later the boy became a young man and opened his own stall next to his mentor. Both of them worked side by side, smiling, greeting people, and sharing their story with anyone who felt hopeless. People from nearby towns began to visit just to hear the story of the beggar who changed his life with his mind and the boy who followed in his footsteps. Soon the market became a place of inspiration, not just trade. Every person there carried the same belief deep inside them. Change your mindset and your life will change. And one evening as the sun set behind the hills, the old traveler returned once more. He saw the two men working together, surrounded by laughter and kindness. He smiled and said softly to himself, "The seed I planted has become a forest of hope." He did not go to them or tell them who he was. He simply watched from a distance and walked away knowing his purpose was fulfilled. Because he understood something powerful. Real change does not end with one person, it spreads from one heart to another. And as long as there is someone willing to believe that they can change their life, the world will keep getting better, one mindset at a time. As the years went by, the market became a symbol of hope for the entire town. Travelers passing through would stop not just to buy fruits, but to hear the famous story of transformation. The man who was once a beggar had become a mentor to many, and the young boy he had once helped had now grown into a strong and wise young man managing his own stall beside him. People began calling their corner the corner of change. One day as the old man sat quietly watching the sunset, a group of children gathered around him, their faces glowing with curiosity and excitement. "Old man," they said, "tell us again how you became so rich and happy." The man smiled gently and said, "My children, I was never rich because of money. I became rich the day I changed the way I thought about myself. The day I stopped seeing myself as a beggar and started seeing myself as someone capable of creating change. That was the day my real life began." He pointed at the boy now grown into a man and said, "And when I shared that belief with him, his life changed too." The children listened in awe as he continued. "Remember this, my dear ones, your life is not defined by what you have today, but by what you believe you can become tomorrow. The world will treat you according to how you see yourself. If you walk like a beggar, you will be treated like one, but if you walk like someone with purpose and confidence, the world will open its doors for you." As the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, the old man took a deep breath and said softly, "Everything in this world begins in the mind. Change your thoughts and your life will follow." That evening the boy who had grown into a man looked at his old mentor and said, "You changed my life and many others. What can I ever do to thank you?" The old man smiled and replied, "You can pass it on. Whenever you see someone lost or hopeless, remind them that they have the power to change their life through their own thoughts. That is how this light will never die. The young man nodded with tears in his eyes and promised, I will keep the light alive. And so he did. He began teaching others the same lesson that had changed his life, and soon new faces appeared in the market, faces filled with hope, determination, and faith. The story of the beggar spread far and wide, inspiring people to rise from their lowest moments and believe in their strength. And though the old man grew weaker with time, his heart was always at peace, because he knew that his story had become a spark that would keep burning in others forever. One peaceful night, as the stars filled the sky, he sat quietly in front of his stall and whispered to himself, I was once a beggar in the streets, but now I am rich in souls. He closed his eyes with a smile on his face and drifted into eternal rest, leaving behind not wealth, not possessions, but something far greater. A legacy of hope and belief. And every morning when the market opened and the first rays of sunlight touched the corner of change, the people would still hear his words echo in their hearts. Change your mindset and your life will change forever. If this story touched your heart, don't stop here. Subscribe to Stories by Jimmy for more motivational and life-changing stories that help you learn English while inspiring your soul. Listen, practice, and grow with each story, because sometimes one story is all it takes to transform your life. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join our growing family of dreamers and learners. Let's keep learning English and changing lives together. Subscribe now to Stories by Jimmy, where every story inspires a new beginning.